Startuprad.io, your podcast and YouTube blog covering the German startup scene with news, interviews, and live events.
Hello and welcome, everybody. This is Joe from Startuprad.io, your startup podcast and YouTube blog from Germany. As you can see from my Christmas sweater and the Christmas tree in the back, it's the time of the year that Christmas is approaching. And as a tradition here on our channel, we are giving you the Fintech review this year. We have some rotating participants just for the simple reason this time, unfortunately, Luca from Berlin, from Penta, is sick. Get well soon, man. And therefore, we do have Paolo, as we had last year, here with you. Hey, Paolo, how you doing?
I'm fine, thanks. Happy Christmas.
And of course, to kind of a little bit replace Luca, he has the mini-me. Can you show him?
Here it is. He's on camera?
Yes.
Can you see it on camera?
Yes.
Good. It's the two of us. This is actually the only place where you can find me and Mini-Me, because Mini-Me doesn't travel as much as I do. He stays home watering the plants, while I've been spending 30 days on flights in the last year, scouting the fintech world everywhere on the planet. So pretty tired at the year end, but it's good.
Yes, I see you traveling all the time. But we also have number 3 here in the mighty bands of pirates. That is Yassin, Dr. Yassin Hankia. Hey, welcome.
Hey, Aaron. Good to be back. I missed last year's review, unfortunately, but good to be here again. I remember we had some good discussions over the recent years before. So actually looking forward a lot to the discussion coming up now.
As you rightly say, the years before. So basically, this is something we are doing since 2014. We, meaning me and the Startup Radio, as now since 2018, the German channel is shut down. This is something we only do in English, and 2017 was the first year we did the Fintech review in English. Nonetheless, if you go down here in the show notes, you'll find the links to the blog webpage where you can, of course, find all the fintech reviews, all the show notes, everything there. Guys, that was a good year for fintech, I've seen. Not only for the ICOs, where Yassin surely can tell a few stories about the inside of, like it is rumored in the press, somewhere between 35 and 40 million successful ICO. Congratulations, by the way. To some IPOs we've seen here in Frankfurt, especially Credit Shelf and Deutsche Familienversicherung, as well as the regulatory storm that we discussed last year. So let's pick up the discussions from the last times, especially in a chronicle order. In 2016, Yassin has been with us, and we've been talking about co-branding between fintechs and banks. And there was big discussion going on back in the time, I remember, especially since Yassin was totally in favor of co-branding. And I do believe I've seen more than 100 corporations alone in Frankfurt alone that is going on between startups and fintechs, and some of them are co-branded. You see yourself confirmed, Yassin?
Yeah, well, I must honestly say not quite, because I would have expected to see this topic even much more pushed through marketing, which is still a bit limited. But as you correctly say, I think one of the examples also here from Frankfurt is the co-branding of Finanzguru with Deutsche Bank, for example. So this is very prominently played also on their website. And I think that's exactly in line with how I was thinking about the topic in the past, saying, look, we can, as a bank, show to our customers that we are innovative, we have a great offer here, at the same time leading that under the umbrella and the brand of the startup, so not to confuse the more conservative own clients which you serve. So I think this still is a good solution to be more edgy on the one hand side, to show off that you are into technology, but on the other hand side, not to disturb your more conservative guys you still want to keep as the big bank. So therefore, I still believe that this way makes sense. Nevertheless, honestly, I must admit, we have seen less banks than I would have expected to move forward in this direction. I still think that white label corporations are more dominant in the market. And the co-branding is still just a much smaller phenomenon.
Personal impression for me as well. For our international viewers who see this the first time, we should tell that Financial Guru, is an app that analyzes your spending behavior and optimizes your personal account. We did an interview back in end of 2016 in English. You can find it down here in the show notes with one of the founders. The company behind it is called Twins, just for the simple reason it's set up by two guys, and they are actually twins. And they've been doing very good PR. They've been in Die Höhle der Löwen, which is actually at the Lion's Den. It's a German version of Shark Tank. They sold 25% of their equity to Deutsche Bank, one of the first fintech investments I was aware of Deutsche Bank here in Germany, as well as they received in the aftermath of the Höhle der Löwen, they received an investment from Carsten Maschmeyer, one of the billionaire founders here in Germany. Whew, now we put it in perspective, right? Chronologically speaking, Paolo is always talking about letter salad, meaning all the regulation. We talked about it a lot in the past FinTech review, and I gotta admit, at this time, it wasn't really something I could touch, but Luca made it very well when he said PSD2 is like the moment the App Store was actually turned on, and it enabled companies like Snapchat, like Uber, just to work. And we have not seen anything like this yet, but keep in mind, it was 10 years ago the App Store opened. So things, especially great things, take time, right, Paolo?
Yes, I think that we need to see regulation this way. When we talk about the banking transformation, we typically focus on the technological problems related to the legacy systems. And so we always discuss the difficulty of banks to transform the legacy systems to basically adopt agile ways of working in order to become faster in creating new products and cheaper in servicing their customers. However, there's something which is even more problematic for banks than legacy systems, which is legacy leadership. Legacy leadership means how do you transform the way bankers operate, they are remunerated, the way they set up the businesses, therefore the construct of the business model. And that's where regulation typically plays, even though for many that is unnoticed, because regulation can somehow create a different environment that forces bankers to think about how to transform their businesses and their business model. And we know that when it comes to transformation on digital, therefore even startup, the business model is more important than the technology itself. Because if the business model is wrong and the technology is good, the business doesn't fly. So now
it was something we've seen at pets.com, right? The website was pretty awesome, but the business model behind it was pretty flawed.
Couldn't go. So now this is the biggest issue for banks, right? So they need to transform the business model, clearly using technology. They need to change the way bankers are somehow remunerated, and the way the bankers understand, right, the transformational value from the institution towards the customers. So here we have among the 4 different type of regulations that hit the European markets in the last year, namely the PSD2, the MiFID II, the GDPR, and the PRIPS regulation 2, which are definitely important. One is the PSD2, and one is the MiFID II. Now, you mentioned the PSD2. I remember a few years ago, most of the banks were considering the PSD2 like a compliance issue, therefore a cost they had to deal with. What does it mean to expose the API? That is not good for us. Maybe it creates more trouble than anything else. But as time went by, they realized how important it is for them to basically transform into an open banking type of business. And therefore, if you want to be an open banking and be successful, you need to have a common playing field, therefore some sort of a standard where everybody can participate and plug in the value. Because ultimately the value is not just to have that little thing which is better than somebody else, but to be capable of creating experiences across the board that follow the client. And therefore, all of the APIs, all of the ecosystem that work around that, it needs to be somehow structured in a way that can cooperate. So the PSD2 turned from being a compliance cost into a banking opportunity. And I saw it across the world because everybody, even beyond Europe, started discussing the PSD2 as an example of a regulatory push that forces the industry to rethink itself in a completely different way. And therefore, when I said 3 years ago, when I launched my first innovation bestseller, that regulation was an engine of innovation, a lot of people said, this Paolo Cirone is a crazy person, too controversial, what the hell does it mean? And now I think people realize that effectively this is so. And the same we can discuss after is happening with the MiFID II.
Yeah, and maybe let me add to this one. I mean, I fully agree on what you are saying, Paolo. I mean, here on this one also, what I would like to add is I fully see that PSD2 does really open up new opportunities. But I think, and that's the issue as I experienced in the past, banks are pretty much still focused rather on identifying issues, being concerned with cost cutting, not so much looking on the revenue opportunities which are out there, because this indeed, as you say, would require a reinvention of the original banking business model, right? So as you say, if now integrating different accounts, like many banks are already offering in the Deutsche Bank mobile banking app, I can now, of course, integrate all my other accounts. I can do that with ING. I can do that with Commerzbank and all the other apps. But this eventually opens up for the very bank the opportunity to aggregate all the financial data of one client. And by having this holistic view, which I would have not had before PSD2, then really offering new services, and new services not only in terms of banking, but also in terms of basically spend optimization, which is also a field SafeDroid is operating in. So basically saying, look, let us identify new channels, how we could actually compensate the fact that we are currently in a zero interest environment, by basically just saying, maybe it's a good idea not only earning as we used to in the history from pure financial side, but maybe opening up new revenue channels by selling new electricity contracts, selling mobile phone contracts, selling some vouchers for spending side of things. Because if you ask me, in the terms of financial service for the mass market out there, it's not only about financial products, but a normal user is also interested in how he can spend his money in a more smart way. And therefore, I think this is a huge revenue opportunity, but still too few banks are actually tapping into this one. I think they're just now a bit exploring, but I think we are just at the starting point for this.
There is something else happening here. I'm sorry, Bjorn, if I
no problem. Go ahead.
And it's related to what you said. You use the word holistic. Therefore, the capability of seeing a client across these multiple dimensions. Typically, clients have more than one account. Some, very active. Others just because they need, for basic needs. But also, clients have different needs, right? And therefore, it's important for banks to understand how to service them, having in mind the 360 perspective of that individual. That ties directly into the concept of platforms, right? So being capable of providing a platform experience means being capable of finding a client on that platform, making sure that as the client moves along his needs and his journey, he's always on that platform. And this is when we see the change as well. Now, the PSD2 has a mechanism that basically is like horizontal, because payments become horizontal, that can be used to power up some element of the open banking platform so that becomes holistic. And you know why that is important? Because another criticism that I've been discussing a lot in the fintech scene was the concept of unbundling. So the idea that the bank can be unbundled into smaller services that are for individual APIs or individual apps that basically optimize pieces of the banking experience. But we know that to be a platform and to be a successful platform, you need to be capable of bundling back. And the problem here is not to divide the bank into pieces, but for the fintech to be capable of contributing into a bundling process where the pricing is not on the individual service, the pricing is on the bundled experience, which is a very complex thing to do. And that doesn't happen overnight. The same is the Amazon experience. Amazon started by providing an experience on one piece only on the e-commerce world, that was selling books, and then expanded his portfolio and managed to create the Amazon Prime, which is basically a price on top of a variety of things, which clients pay like a recurrent revenue. Now, this should be, hypothetically, because it's very complex, so theoretically, the business model of the future for a bank. But to get there, it requires a huge understanding of the value that banks truly generate for the client and how the clients will be willing to pay for this new value at the end of this journey. Therefore, you cannot transform a bank as a derivative. So looking at what the bank is today and trying to digitize a piece or like optimizing individually, if you don't have a full perspective, you need to think first principles, which is a completely different way of thinking that is very complex to do.
We should tell our viewers, our listeners, how banks actually work right now. So basically, they used to be in the past, they have some bank advisors that actually are incentivized, are led by numbers. Basically, they have to push into the market X savings account, X depots, and stuff like that. That is like it was in the past, like late 90s, early 2000s. And ever since banking changed, but many banks still have this set up according to products. Like there's the corporate banking, there's the investment banking, there's the retail banking, there's the asset management, and they don't necessarily in between exchange data and numbers. And now they have to do it like on a basically global basis, or at least European basis, in order to comply with the regulations. And that makes it totally different, because at first they just sold products, and now they have to completely change their mindset into what does my customer actually need? Because in the past it was also like that. You only had this triangle, how the clients are segmented. Basically, you had the retail clients like me, the poor guys. Then you had the little bit wealthier clients like Paolo and Yasin, and then you had the ultra wealthy, the successful entrepreneurs, the Mark Cubans and Mark Zuckerbergs of the world, like on the very top. And that was the only reason they had this, because you could push different products. But now it is becoming much different, because like, for example, an entrepreneur like Yasin may have also a lot of assets to invest, but it's completely different because he's an entrepreneur. He has to care about different things than Paolo, who's basically right now an employee, right?
Basically, so I guess the point is not to divide individuals by their wealth, but by their needs and techno literacy. Clearly, needs might vary according to the wealth, but is not necessarily linked to an amount of money that you have. It's about your job, right? What you do is about your ambitions, right? And how you want to service your ambitions. And then it's about your techno literacy, how much self-directed you can be, and how much individual relationships, like human relationships, you need to have, because it's very difficult for banks to jump straight into digital. So definitely another thing that we saw that the fintech ecosystem started realizing in 2018 is that the hybrid model so far is a very important and relevant model. You saw basically Betterment last year that started hiring human advisors. You saw Wealthfront out of California. They started adding human advisors on the phone a few months ago. So it's always important to make sure that you always find a way to explain to your customers the value proposition, because maybe you understand them more, but not necessarily they understand you, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean that just because you're digital, they understand the value proposition. So it's a very complex and delicate way of transforming banking, but that's why it is so exciting to be part of it.
Exactly, I do agree, and I think here it's really then to keep it short, coming from a pure product push distribution approach to a needs-based assessment, and then matching, as we already said, the needs with the appropriate products. And I think what you are just saying, Paolo, is very important. Also, getting this to the right timing when it's relevant for the customer. Because also, if you look to different products, the relevance of a financial product or a service may be different depending on where I'm currently in the year, how my life changed, maybe given because I changed my job, given because maybe I married, a child was born, whatsoever. And I think this makes it much more complicated, but technology is there a great enabler, I think, to cover this complexity. So I think we don't need this to be done by individual advisors anymore, even so that still, as you say, it does make sense to have a person talking to the end user, because we feel that I think it's more a psychological helper at the end. It just, for many people still today, feels more comfortable discussing with a human person on the other end on the line than interacting with a pure technology.
That is quite interesting, because what I realized right now is like you both talking about different participants in the financial markets. Paolo a little bit more on the bank side, Yasin much more on the fintech side, but basically both are kind of merging together a little bit more. The banks are actually getting away a little bit from their relationship approach and applying more technology. And the fintechs, on the other hand, realize not only can you do it with pure technology, it doesn't work. You need human interaction. And so I see it, they get together, they get closer together, right?
Yes, absolutely they do. And the reason they get together is because they both want to use this one, which is a mobile. And the mobile has the same characteristics. You actually see that this is my Twitter account, the Pisirone. And
this product placement was not paid for.
yeah, that's it. But it's always me. It's me, right? There's another one. But you know, we say that the mobile is a pull technology. That means it's demand driven. While a lot of banking revenues operate into a push economy, is an offer driven business. Yasin minutes ago said that the interest rate margin is not allowing banks these days to play like loans and mortgages to make up revenues on the balance sheet after the price and cost of capital. So that is the tendency of many institutions, especially in Europe, to move towards intermediation margin. That means payments, global payments, to instant payments, will have to go down in margin. And what remains is wealth management for everybody. People with small money, with big money, that means investment products and insurance products. But that business is really very much push oriented. That means that you never told me, Paolo, let's take a look at what is going on Amazon, right? Because you want to go on Amazon to buy a pair of shoes, and then you see an advertisement in one of my books, and then you want to buy it. But then, if you have to invest your money, you typically, try to get yourself informed. It takes a lot of time, and then you want to talk to somebody to make a financial decision. Now, banks knew that, but they know that that model is very expensive, and they know that the MiFID II in Europe, as well as the competition from the American players like Vanguard and Fidelity, is pushing the margins down. So they need to use way more technology, but they cannot lose the clients on the way. The fintech started from a technology perspective, and they're learning that the psychology of the investor is not the psychology of the consumer. And therefore, they need to figure out now how to mix and match the model. That's why co-branding and competition between a human model and a digital model for 2019, 2020 will be somehow winning in many cases compared to other businesses, as long as we're really talking payment and it can become a volume business, but there's a difference between volume and value.
Yep. And I mean, for that moving together also, I think one thing is important to keep in mind here, right? Yes, we are seeing this convergence, but on the other hand side, also what is a bit the motivation? I do think on the motivation is very different, right? I think on the bank side, it's really about having understood that it's important to apply more technology, less manual work in order to significantly cut costs and live up to the user expectations to have a better matching of product and needs. On the other hand side, I think from the fintech side, this is the understanding that the pure digital approach, at least at this point in time, does not yet 100% work. So there is a need in order to increase the cost to put some manual labor to that. And we have seen practical examples, right? So Scalable Capital, I think, is now also starting with some real advisors out there in the field. Then Clark, for example, in the insurance space, is using real people in order to call their customers to give personalized advice. So I think we can see that the fintechs who have raised significant amount of money and who have a bit more complex products have understood that this human component is essential in order to drive conversion, to drive sales. So therefore, yes, it's a convergence, but I think it's very different motivations of the banks versus the fintechs moving towards the same direction.
There is, however, a condition under which this can be transformed. And that condition, I'm not saying it's going to happen or not, but the industry is moving towards a direction, is that artificial intelligence becomes truly and deeply conversational, because voice is the new marketing. And the moment that happens, your mobile goes from being a demand-driven technology into an offer-driven business, and the circle can be closed. But it will take some time. If it ever happens, it has to start in e-commerce first before it moves into banking and insurance. But that is what I'm really looking at, closely every time I can, because I'm trying to figure out, if effectively we're improving along the line, and in which industry this is starting to happen, because that would be truly revolutionary. Okay, the rest will be a transformation. The revolution comes from that on.
What has also been a big craze, at least towards the end of last year, has been crypto. Approximately a year ago, I think Bitcoin hit almost 20,000 US dollars, and now it's pretty much down. I remember we've been all a little bit critical about crypto space in the past. Maybe not Yasin, because he actually did a successful ICO. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because without touching crypto, we would not do a proper review here, right?
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, nevertheless, maybe to start at this point, as you correctly say, right, we have seen this tremendous hype in December, still also lasting a bit towards January this year, where the price is just skyrocketed like crazy. And I think on this one here, in the whole market, there was this crazy kind of party feeling. Prices would continue forever going up, which at this point should have actually already run the alarm bells, because I think what we've seen here is not a phenomenon which is typical to crypto, but we know that from stock markets, right? It has not been so much different from what we've seen at the new economy bubble, what we have seen in other areas, which is prices without any fundamental reason were moving up like hell. Then, of course, more and more people trying to jump on the running train. At the end, then really resulting in a very strong market correction. That's what we then saw throughout the year of 2018. But if you ask me now, and I think that's the much more important topic than discussing this crazy volatility which is out there, I always say, for me, it's about the technology rather than the volatility, meaning that I strongly believe, and that's why I also made this move towards the ICO and towards the crypto space, that the technology is here to stay. Meaning that at the beginning, we are now in a very early stage of the crypto environment still. But I'm not even sure if the currencies we are currently seeing will be the coins really dominating also the future, because I think we need to get much more efficient in terms of technology, of scalability, of also transactional cost, which is behind the whole crypto topic. But let's keep in mind that the opportunities which you can do in real life use cases, which honestly speaking are not there yet, but will come in the future, have much more to offer than just a big casino as it's currently being perceived in the broader mass market, right? If I ask my friends, people are always telling me, look, our price is moving up and down so crazily, I can just do some sports betting and the outcome will be the same. This is actually very sad, because if this is the general perspective in the broader mass market about cryptocurrency, then this is definitely wrong, right? People should be educated about the opportunities of the technology. People should be given the opportunity to understand what crypto can do for us in the future. And I believe that they will be really striking use cases in retail, in shopping, in other areas, in financial services also, which will really make a difference and which will clearly show the advantages of the technology to the end user. But this is currently not, at least not in Germany, being the discussion happening in the broader mass market. So therefore, to cut this short, I must say, is it really so surprising that markets went down 2018 that much? I wouldn't say no, because if you would have learned from past experience in other markets, it's actually a natural behavior. If one thing is hyped, then the hype will come to an end and prices will fall. Does that mean this will be the end of crypto? Definitely no. For me, it's just the starting point. And that was why, and then to come back, sorry for this longer talk here, to come back to your question. We did the ICO exactly for this reason, because we saw the technology. We thought, okay, this is a phenomenon which should actually be brought to the mass market. And that's why we did the ICO, in order to build a product which will enable mass market adoption. So the new app we have now built, which is currently in beta, which will be publicly available then starting from January 2019, is about a very simplistic mobile app which you connect to your credit card, and then you can do micro savings and auto convert this micro savings into cryptocurrencies. The cryptocurrencies will be securely stored, so you don't need to sign up for an exchange, you don't need to set up a wallet, you don't need to handle a private key. So we basically remove all the technology complex adoption barriers, and we make it very, very simplistic for the average user out there to experience crypto with a very small and tiny budget. So to really get the experience in the first place, and also thereby opening the space, hopefully, that people can get a bit more open in their mindset for using crypto in the future. And that's why we did the ICO, because we believe in this market. We see it as just the starting point. And as you said, then our ICO was running still in a good time. So market timing was still a bit our friend. We did our ICO from January to March. That's why we are able to raise still a quite good amount of money. If you look to this phenomenon nowadays, ICO are mostly dead. The ICOs currently running do have even trouble raising 500,000, 1 million. So this market has come to a very abrupt end. I do hope that it will recover, because I personally think ICOs are a great opportunity for startup refinancing. Of course, we need to discuss about the risks which are inherent to this market. But in general, I think it's a good thing if we can bring it to a more sustainable basis.
We should add, for everybody who's not as old as I am, that the effect is already pretty well known. For example, the most recent example was the dot-com bubble. But there are examples going back in Germany, for example, Gründerkrach, Railway Mania may be a very well-known thing. So basically, you introduce a new technology, the prices go through the roof, and then they crash. And then there's something good left over. For example, from the dot-com bubble, you guys may know Google or Amazon, which have been around at this time, and they're still here. So not everything there is bad, but it was an exuberance. It couldn't last forever.
Well,
right, Paolo?
There is a difference between a bubble and a scam, in any case, but clearly this market has been overhyped. Now, I'm going to Beijing in a couple of days. It's one of my last, actually, it's my last assignment this year publicly, and it's a book signing at Renmin University. But what excites me when I go to China is that I use the QR code for paying everywhere, and that's all of my WeChat account. So basically, people need to pay with a phone. They don't need a crypto asset. People that need a crypto asset are a minority on the world stage, which are self-directed. It's just like the robo-advisors. Most of the people don't need a robo-advisor. They need to know what to do, basically, with the money. So for whatever reason, which is linked to the idea of making money very fast, the world started discussing the wrong topic. So the topic should not have been the evaluation of a crypto per se. It should have been a limited type of interesting topic for a few guys that could basically further understand the risks, instead of discussing how technology can be applied, so that on top of that technology, a solution is created that services what people really need in their daily life to make their life much easier.
I do agree, and I think in order that to happen, what we need in the first place is also a stable regulation on a global level, which is still not there, right? If we currently do crypto regulation around the world, it's highly differentiated, and I think it's hard to offer something on a global scale given these different regulatory schemes. Because if you look to BaFin, was taken a very different approach than, say, the regulator in the UK, than the regulator in France, than the SEC. So this still, of course, leaves private corporates with a huge regulatory risk. And I think that's also a point why we are not yet seeing so many use cases, right? And I mean, just to bring one example, I would believe that if I would be a huge retailer, say Amazon, there would be a tremendous financial impact in a positive way to my business case if I could offer an own coin to be used for paying goods at my own shop. Because if I can reduce the payment costs I'm currently having with MasterCard, Visa, PayPal, and the likes, and basically internalize this cost by using our own coin, to which even I can bundle things like loyalty, things like other product usage, Prime, for example. So I can create much more attractive use cases. I can make users much more sticky, and I can internalize cost. I think this can really create a win-win, because here I, as a player, can have a positive P&L impact. The user can have a product which is dominant to the product currently being offered. Then, of course, the old players are left out a bit in this space. But this is also the cycle then of innovation. And I believe we'll see something like this once we have a clear regulatory framework. And then there can be much more real-life use cases. At this point in time, it's very tough to explain to a normal user out there why one should use crypto. For them, again, it's the casino gambling stuff. But once we would have, and that's what we are envisaging, once we have a real-life use case where I could say, look, what can you do with crypto? You can actually do your purchases on Amazon with crypto. Then the question's answered, right? I don't need to explain anymore what crypto is good for, because then everybody will understand by the use case. Bam. And that's, I think, what we will need in order to really see this mass market breakthrough. And on the other hand side, for the regulation, we have seen SEC now shooting down all the ETF plans which have applied for a license in the US. I think this is another major barrier. Once we see the first SEC approval going in this direction, again, we will have really mass market impact by people understanding, okay, this is much more than what I thought it was. And I think if these steps happen, then we can really see positive shocks towards mass market adoption. But unless this happens, it will be very tough to bring crypto to the masses.
So I would say the following. The reason why Tamagotchi, if you remember the Tamagotchi, was so successful 15 years ago, is it 15 years ago, Johan? Is because it was cool. But the reason why it's not there anymore is because it was only digital. It didn't live in the real world. The reason why Amazon is so powerful among the digital players is that Amazon de facto is a link between the real world and the online world, because it's a marketplace for real assets. So that means that every time you link the two worlds, the online and the offline, you get more powers. So to me, the reason why WeChat is more powerful than Alipay at the end of the competition between the two Chinese giants is that WeChat grabs the majority of the offline payments with an online technology, right? So it's therefore capable of linking the two worlds. So now, what does it mean for crypto? I was hosting a stage at Singapore Fintech Festival last month, inviting some guys talking about financial literacy and technology. And at the same conference, they had a keynote by Christine Lagarde, the head of the International Monetary Fund, and she publicly basically talked about the potential relevance of issuing centrally backed cryptocurrencies. So basically making cryptos or a form of that, which some guys I know would say that's not crypto, okay, something else, but using the technology to transform the way fiat money in the end operates. That would be truly revolutionary here, because that would allow to link the online and the offline world. Now, this is not free of complications, though. I am an institutionalist individual. I believe in the role of regulation, but I believe in the role of transparency more than control. So, the moment you mix up the two elements, you also create more control for individuals, not just more freedom. So freedom is a romantic statement. Control is something that you don't figure out because you find a convenience, and then you find in the very end that everything basically that you do is somehow tied to control, right? The controlling element. So there are many aspects that I think needs to be considered and understood to make sure that privacy and freedom is fully accounted for. But I think that the real element for that to be transformative is not even Amazon to use that, but it's for central banks to start playing the game so that they will reconcile, again, bundle back the online world and the offline world.
Do you think there will be crypto central bank money like the only thing that is there as a real usable international currency is US dollars, but there's something else. It's called drawing rights. It's basically the share you have in the International Monetary Fund. You think there will be something like the drawing rights between central banks or something like this based on crypto in the future?
Well, put it this way, what happened at the height of the global financial crisis is that the Americans realized that they had a problem with the financial system. One of the consequences was to fight against the banking capacity. So that Switzerland, got somehow targeted, that. And so Americans wanted to repatriate a lot of money. So the possibility of controlling how money flows, especially these days, because the velocity of money is unprecedented, is an important element for central banks and for policymakers. So now, I know that I'm controversial again. A lot of guys discuss the ideas of the blockchain and the cryptos to be free, but I'm actually saying, even when it comes to the Bitcoin, I got my points of view, right? If you read some of my articles about putting my head up in the very end, because there's always somebody more powerful than somebody else, especially if that person retains 1 million of those Bitcoins and you don't know what those things are. But the mechanism might also facilitate basically the capability of tracking effectively and instantaneously how money flows, right? And that's very powerful. Things about taxation. I know Germany is a country where people prefer to pay cash. It's one of the biggest and more exciting pro-cash countries in the world. Italy is another one. So what would happen if we would not be able to use that cash? The cash is somewhere.
Yes, actually, in Germany, it's here in Frankfurt. There's still a handful of. Unfortunately, we lost Yassin. I'll invite him back. Maybe there's some interruption with his internet. Actually, there's some stores in Germany where you can only pay cash. So no debit card, no credit card, no WeChat QR code. Nothing is working. So that's the way we are. But admittedly, I'm used to carry cash around. I do pay a lot of the stuff I do in cash because it's easier to keep an overview over that. I think we're running pretty good in terms of time, but let me talk a little bit about a few things I wanted to share as well, because I do believe the fintech world and the banking world are getting closer and closer together. Two examples that didn't get a very good press coverage, especially internationally, have been the successful IPOs of Credit Shelf, a Frankfurt-based P2P credit platform for German Mittelstand, small and medium enterprises, as well as Deutsche Familienversicherung, which is a direct insurance company, but actually they are seeing themselves more as a fintech. Each one raised double-digit millions in the IPO, and they've been the very first ones of their type here in Germany. And nobody realized it. If it would have been a startup from Berlin, the international press would be full with it. But Frankfurt does have a problem in fintech coverage, right?
Oh, guys, that's more for Yasin, I guess, as a question. I guess that I spend only 5% of my time in Frankfurt. But if there's someone taking the fintech Frankfurt scene around the globe, that's definitely me.
Yeah, see, I think on this one, I think, yes, Frankfurt is having a challenging time if it comes to really competing, not only on the German level, but also on the international. One must admit that Frankfurt is trying its best to catch up. I think there was quite some activity over the recent years, but still, just a few days ago, the new Comdirect market result study was made very clear that in terms of number of fintechs, money raised, rounds completed in VC funding, and so on and so on, Frankfurt at best is number 3 in Germany. So Berlin coming in first, then Munich being number 2, and Frankfurt coming in third only. So yes, that is very true. On the other hand side, if you look to the statistics, one must also honestly admit that, of course, the numbers from Berlin are a bit biased by the extreme outliers, right? And that is what doesn't make it so easily comparable. Because if you remember correctly, in 2018, N26 alone raised 140 million euro plus, right? Then just recently, Finley raised 40 million plus. So if I add that together, I already come to more than 180 million euro of the funding, which we are allocated to fintech in Berlin. If I take these out from the ranking, then the story looks a bit different, right? And I think this is what one always needs to keep in mind. It always depends on which statistic you're looking at. And then you can really come to a conclusion how representative and how fair the statistic is. But yes, nevertheless, I don't want to give the impression that Frankfurt is much stronger than it actually was displayed in this competition. At the end, I also have the question, is it really so important if it's Berlin, if it's Hamburg? I think we, at least from, I see it more as the German fintech space, we should push that Germany as a country can win now in the competition. Also, I think Paulo can also share his international perspective to this one. Last but not least, what you were saying about the IPOs, yes, I mean, if we look to the credit shelf IPO, right? I mean, the company has successfully raised 16.5 million euro. They performed this IPO at Deutsche Börse. So, you know, there are quite some tough guidelines you need to fulfill. You need to have this perspective. They have done all that properly. I must say, I also know the founders personally. Great job, well deserved. Yeah, and at the end, if you look to the media coverage, some media was actually headlining, you know what, credit shelf IPO was a disappointment. Honestly, I must say I cannot understand this kind of journalism, because here again, I think this is a very classical German approach, being negative about things, positive way in order to foster sentiment for the German startup ecosystem. And that's what I'm not seeing. I see media rather bashing than celebrating, which again does not mean that media should be naive, but to be a bit more positive around the successes which we do have in the German fintech industry. And we just discussed a few, and that's just not being visible in the media.
I want to say something important here, therefore, Jorn, about the fintech history of Frankfurt. Tonight, we go to the Christmas market together, and we have something important to celebrate. In December 2008, I went to a notary in Frankfurt to establish my startup, my fintech called Capitex, that IBM bought in 2013. They wanted to use the API economy to transform wealth management with client centricity. So we can claim that the first ever fintech in Germany was established in Frankfurt in 2008, and this is the 10th year of celebrations.
We'll totally make this claim. I don't see any reason for that. We do have much more startup news. If you go down here in the show notes, we have all the stories that have been coming through, the IPOs, the down rounds of Creditech, which used to be the most valuable fintech startup in Germany, but apparently it got downgraded to the value of only the money that got in, and all this stuff like that. But I do believe we should celebrate, we should end on a high note, celebrating 10 years of fintech here in Germany, taking part in the API economy.
Good.
Good.
Great.
Great, guys. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure having you all here, and hopefully see you next year.
Absolutely.
Thanks
Merry
so much,
Christmas.
Jürgen. Great as always.
Happy New
Have a good
Year.
one.
Feliz Navidad.
Buon Natale.
Buon Natale, of course.
Ja, frohe Weihnachten.
Frohe Weihnachten. Here we go.
That's all, folks. Find more news, streams, events, and interviews at www.startuprad.io. Remember, sharing is caring.